I'm just a regular mother, living in a small house on the edge of a quiet American town. No fancy degrees, no big bank account, nothing glamorous. But my life has always had one purpose. My son. I raised him with these two hands. Hands that washed his tiny clothes, cooked his meals after school, and wiped his tears after his first heartbreaks. I believed deep in my heart that if I loved him unconditionally, he would grow up grateful. But I was wrong. I never imagined the day would come when my son would look at me and see nothing but a walking wallet. No. How are you, Mom? Just. Mom, do you have money? If this story makes you think of your own mother, if there's something in your heart that still hasn't been said, listen, share, subscribe. Not for me, for every mother out there suffering in silence. They need to be heard, seen, and loved the way they deserve. My son used to be my entire world. From the moment he was born, I knew my life would no longer be mine. I gave up every comfort, every dime, every hour of sleep, just to see a smile on his little face. I was a single mother. My husband died when our boy was just 4. At the funeral, I didn't cry much because I had to hold my child together, and I told myself, it's okay. From now on, it's just the two of us. As long as I can breathe, my son will never go without. I did every job I could find. House cleaning by day, sewing clothes by night. My back ached, my hands cracked, my hair turned gray too early. But I never complained. I cooked every meal, folded every shirt, made sure his bed was warm, clean, and safe. I had no inheritance to leave him, no savings account, only a mother's heart. And when he was sick, I'd lay my hand on his forehead and whisper, if someone must feel this pain, God, let it be me. I believed if I gave enough, he'd understand. If I loved hard enough, one day he'd return and say, Mom, I'm grateful. But time moved on. He grew up, graduated, got a job, found a girlfriend. I was proud. I was happy. And every time he called, I'd put on my best voice, hide my medicine bottles in my sleeves, and smile into the phone so he wouldn't worry. Then I noticed the calls grew shorter. And the content? Different. No more. Mom, guess what happened at work today? Now it was. Mom, I'm short on rent. Can you send me something? And then again. And again. I gave. Sold my old wedding ring. Cut down on groceries. At first, I called it helping. Later, I realized it had become a pattern. A habit. And that habit slowly erased me from my son's heart. I was no longer his mother. I was a problem solver, a shortcut to avoid adult responsibility. And then, one day, when I couldn't help anymore, I understood something deep. Love without boundaries becomes a tool to be used. I started pulling back. I stopped cooking his favorite meals on weekends. Stopped wrapping his birthday gifts 3 months in advance. I sat in my kitchen, quiet listening to the fridge hum, the clock tick, waiting for the phone to ring. But it wasn't out of love anymore. It was because rent was due. I kept telling myself, he's busy, times are different, don't be bitter. But one day, he called in front of his girlfriend and said, this is the lady who helped me get through college. Not my mom, not the woman who raised me alone. I said nothing. I hung up. And for the first time in years, I didn't cry for him. I cried for me. I asked myself, was my love the wrong kind? Had I given so much, without teaching my son to appreciate it, that I lost my place as a mother? I stopped blaming him. I turned inward, looked at myself. And I remembered something an old friend once told me. Being a mother takes learning. Not just learning to love your child, but learning how to let your child love you back. So I made a decision. No more arguing. No more pleading. I simply said, "Number." The first time I refused, he got angry. "Really, Mom, you're selfish now? You can't help me with a little money?" I stayed calm. I told him, clearly and quietly, "This isn't selfishness. This is me refusing to keep you stuck in the body of a grown man with the mind of a child." He hung up. 3 days. No call. No text. So I put on my old shoes, went out to the back porch, watered my plants, baked bread, and practiced the breathing exercises the doctor had taught me. And you know what? For the first time in a long while, my heart began to rest. 1 week later, he messaged me, "Mom, I got a side job. I think I'll manage this time." I stared at the screen with tears in my eyes. Not because it was dramatic, not because it was profound, but because, for the first time in years, he didn't ask me for money. Since that day, I've expected nothing. No apologies. No holiday gifts. All I hope is that by holding on to just a little dignity, I taught my son something he wasn't learning anywhere else. Real love isn't giving endlessly. Real love teaches us how to grow. Yes, I'm still his mother. But I'm no longer the kind of mother who lives in fear of losing her child. I'm the kind of mother who lives with quiet faith that maybe one day he'll understand, in his own time. And if he doesn't, I'll still forgive him. But I'll never again let anyone, not even my own son, hurt me the way I allowed before. I'm not telling this story so anyone will pity me. I'm telling it for the mothers like me, the ones who gave so much they lost themselves, the ones who got left behind in the very homes they built. But still, they rise. They keep walking. They love without losing themselves again. I used to believe that the bond between mother and child could never break, no matter the anger, the silence, the distance. I believed that when life wore him down, he would come back. But one day, that quiet faith inside me shattered. Like the teacup I dropped on my cold kitchen floor. It was raining that day. The house was damp. I was drying out some blankets when the phone rang. It was him. And, like a child on Christmas, I lit up. I hadn't even said hello yet when he barked, "Mom, send me $300. It's urgent." I hesitated. $300 wasn't small. I'd just paid my car insurance. My heart meds were due. So I said, softly, "Sweetheart, I'm a little tight this month. I haven't gotten my pension check yet." There was a pause. Just a few seconds. But what followed hit harder than anything I've ever heard. "You're always like this, Mom. Anytime I'm in trouble, you run. Just forget it. Don't bother me anymore. Just send the money." My hands trembled. My heart raced. The phone almost slipped from my fingers onto the cold, tiled floor. I stood there frozen, my eyes locked onto the crack in the wall, right where his father once hammered in a coat hook decades ago. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I knew if I let the tears fall, the flood would come, and I'd lose what little strength I had left to stand. All my life, I had only one wish: that my son would grow into a good man. Not brilliant, not rich, just someone who lived with kindness, someone who remembered where he came from. But in that moment, for the first time, I doubted everything. Did I go wrong somewhere? Was it because I loved him too much, that he forgot who he was? Or worse, was I the one who taught him to forget gratitude by never once telling him no? That night, I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I left the nightlight on and sat in the kitchen for hours, re-sewing the loose buttons on an old shirt, just like I used to do when he was small. I thought about all the things he had said, words that weren't knives, but cut far deeper. You talk too much, Mom. It's exhausting. I can handle it. Stay out of it. If you can help, just help. Don't make a speech. Those words I used to brush off. Told myself, he's busy. He's young. Don't take it personally. But the more I excused it, the more I enabled it. And the more I enabled it, the further he drifted from me. He drifted so far. I was no longer a mother. I was a bank account. A number saved in his phone only, dialed when life went sideways. I began to live in two different worlds. In one world, I still went to the grocery store, still smiled politely at neighbors, still made small talk with old friends from church. But in the other, the one inside me, I felt hollow, like a spare bedroom after the child has moved away. Every time the phone rang, my heart would race. Maybe, just maybe this time, he'd call and say, "Hey, Mom, I just wanted to hear your voice." But it never was. It was always a message. "Mom, my credit card is past due." "Mom, I lost hours at work again. Can you transfer something today? Please soon." Cold? Quick? No, "Hi, Mom." No, "Thank you." No warmth. I even tried to count how many times he called, just to check on me, with no financial reason behind it. I finished the count. 0. I never told anyone about this. Not a soul. Why? Because I was ashamed. Because I blamed myself. Because I didn't want anyone to think that I had failed at being a mother. But inside, I was drowning. I went to church, listened to sermons about forgiveness, compassion, and letting go. But my chest stayed tight. Because the truth is, I wasn't angry at my son. I was angry at myself. Where did I go wrong? Did I carry so much of his burden that I robbed him of the chance to learn how to carry his own? Did my love without boundaries become the very reason he never had to grow up? That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was worried anymore, but because I had finally run out of excuses. I sat with the question, am I going to keep living like this? I stepped out onto the porch, into the October chill, and looked up at the dark sky. It felt like a silent conversation between me and my son, the kind we never actually had, but always needed. I didn't curse him. I didn't wish him harm. I just stood there, with one thought echoing again and again in my mind. I've been a mother for so long. Now it's time I learn how to be a woman who can love herself too. So I made a decision. Not a loud, angry decision. Not some dramatic goodbye. Just a quiet shift. I stopped letting him keep walking the same path, without ever being asked to turn around. I used to clean up the mess behind Hymevery time, patch up the damage, soften the consequences. But now, I chose to step back. If he wanted to hold on to something called family, he would have to walk toward Eitan his own 2 feet. The next morning, I sent a message. I love you, but I can't keep helping you in a way that makes you depend on me. If you need advice, I'm always here. But if you only need money, then I'm sorry. No reply. But something inside me shifted. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a victim anymore. I felt like a mother learning how to let go. Not to punish, not to disappear, but to teach one final lesson. Real love doesn't come from a wallet. It comes from awareness. I used to believe, if my son turned his back on me, it was his fault. He changed. He became cold. He forgot. But the longer I sat in this quiet house, the more I began to ask myself, what if there were things I did wrong, and I just didn't see it? I started flipping through my old journals, the ones I used to write in when he was still a little boy. There were pages where I wrote, "He's sick. I stayed up all night. But this morning, he smiled. That's all I needed." Others read, "He broke a dish." I yelled. But then, I apologized first. And again, I wrote, "I just can't bring myself to teach him anything that would make him sad." I don't know when it happened. But somehow, over time, I taught my son that everything could be forgiven even when he never said he was sorry. One day at church, I shared my story with an older woman. She didn't say much. She just handed me a small, plain book. "This is for you," she said. "Read it. You'll understand." It wasn't a bestseller. It wasn't academic. But there was one line in it that stopped me cold. If someone doesn't know how to be grateful, maybe it's time to look at how we've been giving. I set the book down and sat quietly. Not because I felt attacked, but because, for the first time, I allowed myself to face the truth. I had loved my son in a way that never taught him how to love me back. I started practicing the simplest things. Every morning, I made myself a cup of tea. Not to wait for my son to come home, but to care for myself. I opened the kitchen window, letting sunlight pour into the quiet room, even though no one sat across from me. I meditated for 5 minutes a day, just breathing in, breathing out, and letting go of old expectations, letting go of quiet heartbreaks I had never named. No one taught me how to do this. I figured it out myself, the same way I once taught myself to be a mother. Now I was learning how to be a woman again. I no longer blame my son, and I no longer label myself a failure. I just remind myself, simply, if today I'm clear-headed enough to reflect on my life, then I've already taken one more step on the path to healing. If today I can sit in silence without crying, without rage, and write my story with a calm hand, then I'm already stronger than I was in all those years I thought I couldn't make it. I realize something important. I don't need him to call me every week. I don't need an apology. I just need one thing: to know deep down that I deserve peace. Letting go. It sounds easy, but it isn't. Especially for a mother who has spent most of her life thinking, if I don't hold on, who will? If I don't give, who else will care for him? I held on to too much. I held on to the lies he told, the disappointment after broken promises, the small hopes that maybe, just maybe, he'd understand one day. But now I know. Sometimes, letting go isn't about losing someone. It's about giving both of us a chance to grow into who we're meant to be. I began writing letters to my son. Not to send, just to say the things I had never dared speak out loud. My dear child, I'm not angry with you. I'm just sad that I raised you without teaching you how to love properly. I used to think that love meant giving without question. But now I understand. Love needs boundaries. Love also means helping each other grow. With every word I wrote, tears fell. But by the end of each letter, my hands felt lighter. Not because I had forgiven him, but because, finally, I had forgiven myself. And slowly, the things that once made me ache became quiet markers of a life I had lived fully. Like old scars. No longer painful, but reminders that I had once poured my whole heart into loving. I went out into the garden and planted flowers in the same patch where I once taught him to water the soil at age 3. And each time a flower bloomed, I whispered to myself, let the past rest in the earth. My job now is to keep watering what's still alive. Since that day, I no longer lived in hope that my son would change. I began living for myself, because even in old age, I deserve love, not necessarily from him, but from the way I choose to honor my own worth. Every evening, I take a walk. Sometimes I chat with my neighbor, Linda, an old friend. I learned to knit scarves, and every now and then, I send one to the nearby orphanage. Yes, I still think of my son. Yes, I still hope he's happy. But I no longer tie my happiness to his behavior. I've been a mother long enough. Now I'm learning how to simply be a human being, one who knows peace. No resentment, no guilt, no shame, just soft smiles in the morning, slower sips of tea, and the quiet confidence that I have lived with my whole heart. If one day he returns, my arms will still be open. But if he doesn't, I will still be at peace. Because now I know I am not a failed mother. I am a woman who walked through her pain and refused to let it define the rest of her life. It took me a long time to act. Not because I feared losing him, but because I feared hurting the love I had protected for so many years. But eventually, I saw it clearly. Love without boundaries only teaches others how to take without giving. That day, he called again. His voice rushed, like always. "Mom, I'm in a tight spot. Rent's due soon. Can you help me?" I was sitting in my wooden chair by the window, sunlight spilling over the hand that held the phone. I took a long, deep breath, and for the first time in years, I said it without shaking. "No, sweetheart, I can't help you this time." Silence. I thought the call had dropped, but then his voice came through, quiet but sharp. "You've changed, Mom. You don't love me anymore." I didn't get angry. I didn't cry. I simply replied, with a voice as soft as air, "No, I haven't changed. I just stopped feeding the part of you that refuses to grow." He got angry, hung up. 3 days, passed no calls. A week no messages. In the past, I would have broken down after something like that. But not this time. I made my tea like usual, watered the garden, called an old friend just to chat, put on soft music, and sat down to knit. Not to forget him, but to remind myself that I have a life too, a soul that needs care. On the 10th day, he texted. "Sorry, I raised my voice. I'm trying to figure things out. Don't worry, Mom. I'll be okay." Just that. No demands. No blame. No victim talk. I read the message over and over, not because I was sad, but because, for the first time in a long while, my heart felt as light as a breeze, rustling through the trees at dusk. I don't expect him to change overnight. I know everyone has their own path. He may stumble again. It may take years. But at least now, I'm no longer part of the cycle that kept him from growing. I don't make love conditional anymore. I don't use money to keep him close. I hold on to just one thing: the quiet faith, that motherly love. When freed of fear and obligation, will always find its way home. The days that followed were strangely peaceful. No more frantic messages. No more midnight calls asking for money. No more words that quietly broke my heart. I didn't know what he was doing. And I didn't ask. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood. Love isn't control. I gave him space. And I gave myself some too. A sky of my own, where I could live without needing anyone's approval or permission. One morning, I was making cookies to give to a neighbor. When the phone rang, it was him. I paused before answering, not out of fear, but to make sure my heart was calm enough to receive whatever came. Mom, I've been thinking a lot lately. I know I made you sad. I stayed quiet. No blame. No digging up the past. He went on. I'm not making promises, but I want to take control of my life. And if you're still upset, I'm sorry. I didn't answer right away. I simply smiled, looked down at the plate of cookies in front of me, and said, I'm not upset with you. I was just sad that I once lost myself in loving you too much. But not anymore. I'm okay now, and I just hope you will be too. The call ended with just 2 words. Thank you. For the first time in a long while, he thanked me. Not because I gave him something, but simply because I was still here. Quiet, steady. I know his journey is still long. I have no illusions that everything has changed. He may stumble again. He might forget again. But I'm not the same anymore. I've learned how to love without losing myself. I've learned how to step back without letting go of love. These days, I fill my time with small, gentle acts. Writing letters to myself, baking cookies for others, meditating under the afternoon sun, and sometimes just sitting quietly with a warm cup of tea, thinking about the path I've walked, with all the honesty I had to give. I'm no longer the mother, chasing after every ripple in my child's life. I'm the mother who stands still, in peace, so that if he ever returns, there's still a warm porch light waiting. And if he doesn't, I'll still be warm enough to carry on. Because after everything, I don't need the world to validate my love. I only need me to know this truth. I loved with everything a mother could give. And now, I choose to live with everything a woman deserves. If you're still listening to me now, and your heart feels a little tight, maybe, just maybe, you're going through something similar. Maybe you're a mother or a father who's given so much, and one day found yourself met with distance, coldness, or even ingratitude. I want to tell you this: you're not alone. And more importantly, you are not wrong. You loved with everything you had, with all your sincerity and sacrifice. But sometimes, even when the love is right, the way we love can still lead to heartbreak. It took me years, so many years, to understand something that should have been simple. Love needs boundaries. Care needs clarity. And being a parent sometimes means learning how to let go. Letting go is not giving up. Letting go means giving the other person a chance to grow. It means giving yourself the space to live, without getting dragged into the whirlpool of pain that unchecked expectations create. I used to think, if I stopped giving money, if I stopped chasing after him, he'd walk away forever. But when I finally stepped back, I didn't lose my son. I found myself again. I'm still his mother, but I'm no longer the woman, willing to hurt silently, just to hold on to a one-sided kind of love. Nothing is random. I've heard that all my life. But only when my heart was finally still did I truly understand it. Maybe the relationship between a parent and child isn't just about blood. Maybe it's a lesson, a sacred bond, a mirror where both sides can see themselves and, hopefully, grow. And if you're wondering, what's left after letting go? Let me answer from my own life, right now. What's left is peace. It's a warm cup of tea in the morning, a quiet walk in the afternoon, without clutching the phone, waiting for it to ring. It's a calm spirit, no longer weighed down by the past or anxious for what might never come. It's looking at yourself in the mirror with soft eyes. No blame, no harsh judgment, just a quiet knowing. You loved, you learned, and now you live. I'm not here to teach anyone how to be a parent. I'm simply sharing my story. As someone who's walked the path, who's stumbled, who's hurt, who's cried. And if you happen to be standing on that fragile line between holding on and letting go, I invite you just once to take a small step back, not to lose, but to see more clearly what's still truly there. I'm not telling this story to seek sympathy. I'm not looking for praise. I speak because I know there are many others like me, mothers and fathers, who gave their youth, their strength, their whole hearts, only to one day feel like they no longer have a place in the life of the very child they raised. I share this to remind you, you still have the right to live a peaceful life, even if your child no longer needs you the way they once did. Every parent knows the fear. If I let go, will they ever come back? But in the end, I believe this with all my heart. True love doesn't need to be held. It just needs to be there steady, gentle, and full of light, so that, when they're ready, they know the way home. I'm still a mother, but I am no longer the one waiting in pain. I am the kind of mother who can smile, even if I'm no longer called by name. A mother who's grateful, even to the child who taught her how to let go, so she could finally learn how to love herself again. If something in this story touched a place inside your heart, just pause for a moment. Take a deep breath. Offer yourself a little kindness, a softer gaze. And if you can, share this story with someone who might need to hear it. Because somewhere out there, a mother or a father might be waiting for just one reminder. They are still worthy of love, even if no one says it aloud.